The National Police Agency says everyone living within 20 kilometers of the Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant had left by noon on Tuesday. The government had ordered them to leave. Police used buses and helicopters to move 546 people from hospitals and nursing homes for the elderly.
Japan's nuclear crisis was looking pretty catastrophic Tuesday after an explosion at one reactor and a fire at another spewed large amounts of radioactive material into the air. In an address to the nation, Prime Minister Naoto Kan pled for calm but warned that radiation had already spread. So, does anyone actually have control over this situation, and what sort of disaster are we looking at? We're joined by Harvey Wassermn. He's the editor of nukefree.org and co-author of Killing Our Own, The Disaster of America's Experience with Atomic Radiation. Welcome back to the program, Harvey. It's been too long. I have been watching the news, but today it felt like it took a turn. Talk to me about what the situation is as we're recording this conversation. What are we looking at today, Tuesday?
Well, it could hardly be worse, Laura. We've had two obvious meltdowns, 3 explosions, 4 reactors on fire. Everything that the nuclear industry said couldn't happen is happening, and we are seeing major radiation releases. The one thing we're sure of is that the government and the utility will always lie about this, and so whatever we know for certain, it's probably about a couple of order of magnitudes worse. We don't see any end in sight to this. There are spent fuel pools that are apparently on fire. We don't know what the situation is with the containments. We don't know if they're able to pump in sufficient seawater to cool these reactors. We also don't know what will happen if they do pump in seawater, because if you pump in this water too quickly, it will create hydrogen, which can then explode and blow off the top of the containment. So it could hardly be worse. This really is an apocalyptic situation. If the worst case scenario, if all 4 of these reactors go, the radioactive cloud will be absolutely lethal. It will hit California within 3 or 4 days after it's emitted. There are already emissions, and in fact, a high likelihood that the radioactive material, the arrival of this material in California is imminent.
Staying with Japan for just a minute, at least at one of the plants, I'm hearing there is a plan to drop via helicopter cooling water into those cooling ponds. Is that really the plan? I mean, what does that indicate to you about what the procedures were before this and are now?
Well, it's utter desperation. This was done at Chernobyl. They dropped boron and then concrete onto the reactor in Ukraine in 1986. I will tell you that the people who flew those helicopters died in droves. I mean, it's essentially a suicide mission. If they're dropping water, it's risky because the heat could turn that water right into steam. It is an act of desperation. It's not a good sign that they're doing it. And, it means that they're at the end of their rope. When they were dropping in seawater, the seawater destroys the reactor. It's the last thing they want to do. So we knew that there was a desperate situation even then.
Is that 20-kilometer evacuation zone big enough?
No. Basically, Tokyo is about 170 to 200 miles away. And if this gets worse, you're going to have to see discussion of evacuation of Tokyo. And I got to tell you that if this was happening in the United States, and it could, there are 4 reactors on the west coast of the United States, 2 at Diablo Canyon at San Luis Obispo, and 2 at San Onofre between LA and San Diego. If those reactors had been hit by a 9.0 Richter earthquake, they would have been ripped apart, and we'd be watching the evacuation of Los Angeles right now. So this is a beyond serious. It really somewhere between catastrophic and apocalyptic at the moment. But if all 4 of those reactors go, the death toll will be in the millions. I guarantee it.
Now, the last news I saw, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, maybe Sweden, have all put plans to both extend the life of their current reactors and consider any more absolutely on hold. What's happening on the U.S. side?
Well, Merkel in Germany says she's going to shut all the reactors in Germany that were open before 1980, which is a very good plan. In the United States, it's an abomination. Barack Obama has said he's not going to change his plans to go ahead with new reactors. There's a $36 billion set aside in the 2012 budget for loan guarantees for new nuclear plants. And, any sane president would have come out immediately and said, well, we're not going to do that. We have had Joe Lieberman, who's been a backer of the nuclear industry, come out and say, well, maybe we should put things on hold. But the White House and the standard flacks in Congress for the nuclear industry aren't budging an inch and saying, no, this doesn't affect us. I'm waiting for the white men in white coats to come and take these people away. This is absolutely a worst case scenario. I was in Japan in the mid-1970s, and this was discussed. There's no surprise here. We all knew there are 55 reactors in Japan. They are all on earthquake faults, all in tsunami zones. Within less than 5 years ago, an earthquake hit Kashiwazaki, and 7 reactors shut, 5 of which are still shut. This is madness here. Every nuclear plant on this earth needs to shut down, and we need to move ahead. This is a sacrifice of human life that's absolutely unconscionable.
Here's what Chuck Schumer had to say, albeit Sunday, but take a look.
The bottom line is we do have to free ourselves of independence from foreign oil in the other half of the globe. Libya showed that. Prices are up. Our economy is being hurt by it or could be hurt by it. So I'm still willing to look at nuclear. As I've always said, it has to be done safely and carefully.
Oh, that opinion may have changed in the last 2 days, but we do know that the lobbyists in Washington are out in full. Every report I've seen has talked about lobbyists, some of them with a history in the energy department, really amping up their arguments in Washington. Who else is out there, and what can be shifted at this point?
Well, the usual suspects are out there pushing this and, saying it can't happen here. Absolute nonsense. After Chernobyl, they said, oh, it was the Soviets. It's a different kind of design. This is the Japanese. The Japanese are better at nuclear power than the Americans. Both General Electric and Westinghouse are owned by Japanese corporations. There are 23 reactors in the United States that are virtually identical to Fukushima Unit 1. Which is the one that had the first disaster, including Vermont Yankee, where the people are trying to shut it down and the industry is holding a hard line. The idea that anybody could actually continue to advocate nuclear power is a pure indication of corporate psychosis way over the line, and it just has to be stopped at this point in time. There is no surprise here. We predicted this. We've been arguing about it for 40 years, and now here it is. And, Schumer was concerned about the economy because of high petroleum prices. Look at what's happening to markets as a result of this crisis. The Japanese market has utterly tanked. World markets all over and all the stock exchanges are really shaken by this. The potential for damage is in the trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions of dollars. Large areas rendered permanently uninhabitable. I don't know how much more of an economic shock you can ask for, but this is really it.
You mentioned economic shocks, and I've just got to ask you, you're there in Ohio. We've spent some time in that state in the last few weeks. Protests there are planned for today, March 15th, on the budget questions and the question of right to organize and collectively bargain. Just quickly, from in your other hat, talk about the situation right now in Ohio around SB 5.
It's a terrible situation. We have an extreme right-wing governor, like the one in Wisconsin and Michigan, brought to us care of Citizens United, the Koch brothers, and Rupert Murdoch. John Kasich was a bloviator at Fox News, and they are bound and determined to kill unions here, as in Wisconsin and elsewhere. And unfortunately, they have a leg up here. We don't have a legislature that can be deconvened by a departure of the Democrats. SB 5, the big anti-union bill, has passed the Senate. It will go all the way to the governor's office. There's not much doubt about that. Anything we're going to do is going to have to be done by referendum. But I have to tell you, the voting machines in this state are completely rigged. And the Secretary of State, who's a conservative Republican, does have the ability to completely reverse an election in this state. So we're really up against it. This is a tough fight in Ohio.
10 seconds to pull things together. It does make you look at the situation in Japan and wonder if people working at some of these plants were really closed down in their ability to raise concerns. I'm imagining we'd be even worse off.
Well, we have had whistleblowers in the nuclear industry. Actually, much of the anti-nuclear movement has come to us thanks to whistleblowers. But, you know, I got to tell you, Laura, that the workers at the Fukushima facility are going to start dying very quickly. The utility has moved most of the workers out already, but when they do that, it's always too late. And I have to tell you also that watching these journalists reporting from over there, those guys are in serious danger. There was a survey done of the journalists who covered 3 Mile Island, and they died in droves. The survey was done by the Village Voice, and our fellow journalists in Japan, right up to the big stars, are going to be, you watch the cancer rates, it's going to be very, very devastating.
Harvey, thanks so much for joining us. Sorry, we're out of time. We'll continue this, obviously, in the next few days. Harvey Wassermn, we'll put a link to his books and work at our website, grittv.org. And meanwhile, if you're appreciating this kind of coverage, you should know that this program is being made available free to public television stations right now. A special offer this spring. If you're interested in your local station running this program, ask them for it. Thanks.
As part of an experiment to observe the phenomenon of atomic detonation at close hand, military personnel and defense officials dig in within a few miles of ground zero. Seconds later, the blast wave reaches the trenches. As the tower of smoke and flame looms overhead, one thought is uppermost in all minds. Now it's over. The fury of it had stunned some, but not one was injured.
Enjoy Grit TV? Want more people to see it? Well, we are making our show available free to public television stations. We need your help to express your opinion. If you'd like to see the show where you live on public television, call your local station and ask for Grit TV with Laura Flanders.